Hello, everybody. Good Shabbat. Today we continue with the book of Isaiah, part 16. So, in these chapters that we've been discussing over the last weeks and that we'll continue to discuss today, Isaiah is noted by historians and biblical scholars as being a political prophet because many of his prophecies, including the prophecy that is cited today in the short chapter 20 of the book of Isaiah, is about the fall of competing or surrounding nations around Israel and or sometimes that such countries wouldn't necessarily be fully defeated, but maybe they would come under Jewish rule or influence. And most of these prophecies did not come to pass. So, so far, I don't think any of the prophecies of Israel controlling other nations around them was really a fact or truth. Or it was greatly exaggerated to make Jewish people in the country of Israel look better. And of course, Israel had two kingdoms, the northern kingdom of Israel and the southern kingdom of Judah. So let's take a peek at chapter 20. So here, in the beginning of chapter 20, we see that Isaiah prophesies that allies, Egypt and Ethiopia, would fall to Assyria. If you take your mind back to earlier presentations towards the beginning of the book of Isaiah, to the north was Aram, which is Assyria, and Assyria's king teamed up with the king of Israel, the northern kingdom of Israel, to attack the southern kingdom of Judah, King Ahaz. And this problem went on through different monarchies of the southern kingdom of Israel. So in order to protect itself, naturally Judah created allies or friendships to protect themselves against the spreading of the Assyrian Empire and the Babylonian Empire and all the other different bodies that moved through there, the Persian Empire ultimately. So Judah was friends with Egypt and Ethiopia. So that's where we'll start, and then we'll add on to it. So Isaiah chapter 20, verse 1 says, "In the year that the commander-in-chief, who was sent by King Sargon of Assyria, came to Ashdod and fought against it and took it." So here we learn that some kind of general sent by King Sargon of Assyria came to Ashdod and fought against it, and they won that battle. So where is Ashdod? Ashdod is right here, which is in Philistia, the place of the Philistines. And when you read the Old Testament, anybody knows from just the basic story of David and Goliath that the Jewish people were not friendly with the Philistines. So this chapter essentially isn't celebrating that Egypt and Ethiopia were destroyed, because at this point in history, when Isaiah lived, again, Egypt and Ethiopia were allies of the southern kingdom of Judah, which was run by the Davidic lineage of kings. So they weren't celebrating that Egypt and Ethiopia fell, but they weren't necessarily disappointed when the Philistines were defeated by Assyria. So, and Ashdod is a city, possibly a major city in Philistia. You'll have to forgive me, I don't know my geography quite well. But I'd assume if they're mentioning it, that it's probably a capital city or a major city within Philistia, the home of the Philistines. So here we are. Isaiah gives a prophetic sign against Egypt and Ethiopia. Isaiah 20, verses 2 through 4. The Lord had spoken to Isaiah, son of Amoz, saying, "Go and loose the sackcloth from your loins and take your sandals off your feet." And he had done so, walking naked and barefoot. Then the Lord said, "Just as my servant Isaiah has walked naked and barefoot for 3 years as a sign and a portent against Egypt and Ethiopia, so shall the king of Assyria lead away the Egyptians as captives and the Ethiopians as exiles, both the young and the old, naked and barefoot, with buttocks uncovered, to the shame of Egypt." So here, Isaiah does something called a prophetic act. And many people do prophetic acts to demonstrate that what they're saying will come to pass. In this case, the prophetic act that Isaiah did, which predicted the fall of Egypt and Ethiopia to the Assyrian king, Sargon II, was that he took off his sackcloth. He removed his sackcloth and took off his sandals. He was naked. Now, number one, sackcloth is something that Jewish people wear, and it still is ritualized today in certain sects of Judaism. But when you wear a sackcloth, you're grieving or you're in mourning. And also, in addition to that, oftentimes they'd wear sackcloth and cover their body in ashes. And this would be a sign that they are grieving, that they are mourning for the loss of a loved one, etc. So here, Isaiah is mourning the fact that the allies of Israel, of the southern kingdom of Israel to be specific, Judah, would be defeated. So as a sign of grief and mourning that Egypt and Ethiopia, allies of the Davidic lineage that ruled Judah, would fall. And that they were shamed by the Assyrians. They were made to walk naked and barefoot with their buttocks uncovered, according to Isaiah. So the Philistines lament that their allies are conquered, leaving them vulnerable. So Isaiah 26 says, in that day, the inhabitants of this coastland will say, see, this is what has happened to those in whom we hoped, and to whom we fled for help and deliverance from the king of Assyria. And we, how shall we escape? So the inhabitants of this coastland are the Philistines in Philistia. So going backward a little bit, Philistia, it was right along the coastline here of the Mediterranean Sea. So when Egypt and Ethiopia fell, this let the Assyrians take over Philistia, who were traditional enemies of the Jewish people in ancient days. So some historical notes about this. It seems that some of these things did seem to come to pass. So King Sargon II of Assyria, who lived from 722 to 705, put down a revolt by the coastal Philistine city of Ashdod in 711 BCE. The revolt was instigated by Egypt in order to illustrate his view that alliance with the Egyptians and Ethiopians is useless. Isaiah walks about Jerusalem naked for 3 years to symbolize the fate of the Egyptians and Ethiopians taken prisoner by the Assyrians. Prophets frequently engaged in symbolic actions that were meant to symbolize and realize their prophetic messages. So here Isaiah was doing a prophetic act that said, if Egypt and Ethiopia couldn't protect the Philistines in any kind of alliance, how will they protect Judah in any kind of alliance against the Assyrians? And of course, the Jewish people of both kingdoms of Israel were taken over by Assyria and by the Babylonian Empire and ultimately by the Persian Empire. So the Jewish people have been in exile or enslaved by many different people historically. So Isaiah was mourning the fact, not that the Philistines fell, because the Philistines were the enemies of the Jewish people historically when you read the Old Testament or the Hebrew Testament. But he was bemoaning the fact that if they couldn't protect the Philistines, how can they protect us? We will ultimately fall under the rulership of foreign occupancy of Assyria, of Sargon. That was what Isaiah seems to be prophesying here. And this is a historical fact. So this is one of the few prophecies that I know of so far in our reading of the book of Isaiah that actually is based in historical fact. Let's conclude with the second cup of blessing. Heavenly Father, Divine Mother of the universe, please bless us as we study the book of Isaiah and the developing thought of the Isaiah school, as it very much did influence the teachings of Mar Yeshua, the Master of Jesus. Please help us to tune into the thoughts of this great prophet and this great teacher who really helped to shape the evolving Judaism of his time, and who also helped to shape greatly the halakha of Mar Yeshua. As we progress deeper and deeper in the studies, may we come into communion with the great Master Isaiah and understand his mind fully in context of the time that he lived in. May it be so. Amen, amen, amen. Thank you, everybody, for coming today. Good Shabbat. I wish you a peaceful time of communion with God during this Shabbat, to reflect and meditate in God. Always remember that God is not above us, but God is within us and interconnects us. Let's not fall into states of division like Isaiah spoke of throughout the earlier parts of the book of Isaiah. But let's see all parts of the world, all countries, as petals on one flower, connected by God. Have a beautiful Shabbat, and I'll see you next Friday.